We are the Childhood Collective, and we have helped thousands of overwhelmed parents find joy and confidence in raising their child with ADHD. I'm Katie, a speech language pathologist.
And I'm Lori.
And I'm Mallory, and we're both child psychologists. We combine the science of ADHD with the compassion of moms and bring you practical tools you can start using today.
So hit subscribe and let's help your family shine with ADHD.
One of the hardest parts of parenting a child with ADHD is wondering, how can I help my child succeed at school when I'm not even there?
We love hearing from families about the amazing outcomes they have experienced after taking our course, Shining at School.
Yes, like Allison, who said, I want to thank you for taking the time and resources you poured into the Shining at School course. I've been an educator for 10 years, and my fourth grade son has had an IEP since kindergarten. Your course is helping me feel more empowered and has made me feel like I can advocate so much better for my son. Truly the best money I've spent on any school-related item.
And Aaron, who told us, my son's 504 was approved today. It was a fantastic meeting, and I'm so happy with the level of support the team agreed on. The principal said my son shines, which made me think of your course. Thanks for all you do.
We seriously love hearing stories like this. It actually gives me chills.
If you want your child to shine at school, our course is here to help you do just that. Head to thechildhoodcollective.com to check out Shining at School and use the exclusive code podcast for 10% off. You can also find the link and code in the show notes.
A very valid question that we get from parents all the time is this: should I tell my child's teacher that they have ADHD?
I think we just got this question today on Instagram, actually. And we totally understand your hesitation when it comes to sharing your child's ADHD diagnosis with the teacher.
On one hand, you really want your child's teacher to understand them so that they can be the best support for them. But on the other hand, you might be worried that putting a label on your child at school could impact how they're treated at school.
Absolutely. And especially if your child is, doing well enough at school, you're probably wondering what good could come from telling my child's teacher that they have ADHD.
As with most advice we offer you here, you have to be the judge of what suits your family and your child's unique needs and circumstances. But today we're going to be trying to make the case for why you should share this information in most cases.
Absolutely. And while we're speaking more specifically today about sharing this information with your child's teacher, we do hope this episode gives you some ideas about how you might share this information with your child's coach or childcare provider or other important people that are involved in your child's life.
Yeah, because we get asked all the time by parents if they should share about their child's diagnosis with the soccer coach or the dance teacher or the camp counselor. So let's dive into 5 important considerations when sharing your child's diagnosis with their teacher.
The first one we really want you to think about is it sets the stage for appropriate expectations for your child, and you get to share what you think those expectations should be. I do lots of evaluations for kids with ADHD, and I would say many parents after that evaluation are very hesitant to talk with their child's teacher. And again, we totally get that. I think the main issue is, are they going to treat them differently? Are they going to think that they're a bad kid? And I will tell you the other side of that. So I see a lot of kids after they've been in school for a period of time. And a lot of times the teachers for many months have been really struggling on their own with not knowing what to do, trying to handle situations on their own, feeling like they can't talk to the parents about what's going on. And many times those teachers don't come to parents until it's a really bad situation where they're really struggling, they're frustrated, and all of a sudden things are kind of blowing up. And so we see those situations a lot. And that's where, we want to prevent that from happening. We feel like, and we talk about this all the time, having an understanding of ADHD and having an understanding of our child helps us to have appropriate expectations, which changes the way we interact with our kids for the better. I mean, think about yourself and when you didn't know your child had ADHD. Maybe you were getting frustrated with them not listening. You were getting angry, you were yelling. And we talk to so many parents who say, "We're so thankful we came across your podcast or took your course." And we just approach things very differently because we understand how our child's brain works. We understand that our expectations for their executive functioning skills really aren't at a 10-year-old level, they're more at a 7-year-old level. And
Mhm.
it helps us to be less frustrated. The same goes for your child's teacher, setting them up to help them understand what ADHD is, understand appropriate expectations, and you explaining really what ADHD looks like in your particular child and their strengths and their particular challenges. Again, sets your child up for more success with your teacher and opens communication up with your teacher.
Absolutely. I think it changes kind of our gut reaction when something challenging happens when we understand ADHD and when a child has ADHD. For example, like there's a challenging behavior in the classroom, you don't know that the student has ADHD. Honestly, like a lot of us jump to like, "Oh, this kid is naughty."
Mhm.
Like
Hmm.
this kid is trying to tick me off. Versus if you understand how the ADHD brain works and how these kids have delayed executive functioning skills and that they're kind of on this different developmental trajectory, when a challenging behavior happens, you jump to more like, oh, this child needs to be taught how to handle this situation, or they're really struggling right now with emotion regulation because that's something that they're currently working on. It's kind of like it changes that gut reaction to those challenging behaviors, and that really changes how we interact with kids.
Yes. And it's so important to keep in mind that we're not saying that we don't have high expectations of our kids. And I want to always be cautious when we talk about adjusting expectations because there's this tendency to be like, oh, so you're just going to let him get away with anything and just run the ship. And that is absolutely not what we're saying. It's adjusting those expectations to be appropriate. And I think of it in my own life, things that I'm not that good at, like golf, and they give you, your handicap, or you get to start on a tee that's closer to the place you're hitting the ball to. Clearly, I'm such a good golfer. I know all of the all the lingo. But it's important because if I tried to play the course the same way that a very experienced golfer does, I would be so discouraged. I wouldn't be doing well. It's not that I can't play golf and I can't learn and I can't grow, but I need to start at a point that is comfortable for me. So keeping in mind that when we say that and we say we need to adjust expectations, we are not saying throw away the expectations. Absolutely not. It's just setting them in a place that is healthy and achievable for everyone.
Meet your child where they are.
Yep.
Yes. I feel like if we had a t-shirt, that might be what it would say on it. But that's a good one. So yes. So the first point is that talking with the teacher is going to help set those appropriate expectations. And as parents, we're a big part of that conversation to let them know how it goes at home and where our child is at. And another reason, our second thing to think about is that when we talk with our teacher and we start this open line of communication, we're really communicating a desire to work together. And this interaction can just set the stage and the tone throughout the year, but it's never too late. So even if you're listening and it's halfway through the school year, you can always come and talk to your teacher about what's been going on and share a little bit more about your child. And as we kind of alluded to, when we don't share that information, when we don't let them know, then teachers end up kind of filling in the blanks themselves. And those are some of those terms that can get used to describe ADHD that are inaccurate but really hurtful. Oh, he's just really lazy and unmotivated, or she's just so
Hmm.
spacey all the time. And so we really want to give them accurate information. And one caveat to this is that the truth is that most kids with ADHD are in the general education classroom, and most general education teachers just don't have a lot of training in ADHD. So, what kind of ends up
They don't get
happening,
any training.
yes,
Any,
that,
yes.
I mean, it depends, and we don't want to like
Yeah.
insult the teachers who have really sought this out. But that's what we hear all the time from teachers is if they know a lot about ADHD, it's been completely self-directed. They've gotten continuing education that they've paid for and done on their own time. A lot of times teachers are saying to us, well, I actually have a child with ADHD, so I got really
Mhm.
interested in this. And yes, that teacher is pure gold and they can really support your child in a different way. But a lot of teachers, they just don't have training in this, maybe a day or two in their entire curriculum. And we know that ADHD is so much more complex than something that can be covered in one day. So, as you think about this and you think about coming and talking with your teacher, being aware that you are probably going to be educating them, particularly if you have a child who doesn't have that kind of typical ADHD presentation, right? So if it's not that hyperactivity and kind of that kid that feels like they're driven by a motor, if you have a kid that's inattentive or a kid who's dealing with, emotion swings, that can be something where the teacher might not even realize that that's ADHD. I know we've all sat in meetings where the teacher has been like, it's not ADHD. And then they start describing what's going on. And we're like, that's
Yes.
literally ADHD.
Absolutely. And I think that leads in nicely to our third point here, Katie, which so you're in the position of being able to help your child's teacher understand what ADHD is, and that's a great start. But our third like main consideration here is that a diagnosis alone also doesn't fully describe your child, but you and your child are able to describe them more fully. What strengths do they have? Where are their challenges? What are you doing at home to support them with some of the same challenges that maybe the teacher is seeing in the classroom? So, kind of, you get to fill in more of those blanks, and you have all of this experience with your child. You've learned over all these years what really helps them. This is your opportunity to share and say, okay, it's one thing to know about ADHD, which is so important, but this is my child. And maybe your child can be involved in these conversations too if they're older. um, it gives you the opportunity to really talk about what helps your child, what's challenging for them, and what have you found works for them. And I think this is also, again, thinking about even just beyond the classroom. A lot of you are asking, should I tell my child's soccer coach that they have ADHD when they're picking flowers on the other side of the field when the other team just scored a goal?
Yep.
You don't necessarily have to tell your child's soccer teacher or dance teacher or chess coach that your child has ADHD, but you can talk about what you have found works for your child. You can kind of validate a concern if they're bringing to you a concern about you know, seeming like they're not paying attention to directions or whatever it is, and say, this is your opportunity to say what works for you at home. So, again, a diagnosis is a piece of it in helping understand your child, but you really have this amazing opportunity to share what supports really help your child with some of the challenges they may be experiencing in the classroom or outside of the classroom in sports and extracurricular activities.
It's funny because my husband and I were just talking about this last night because he was coaching my youngest soccer girls team, second graders, and he's like, oh my gosh, like I don't know what I'm doing wrong. It's like they're not paying attention. And I definitely, again, when you're dealing with younger kids, there's definitely going to be kids that are struggling to pay attention. And I know like he would have appreciated a parent coming and saying, oh yeah, this is something we struggle with, you might have to like get on her level or touch her shoulder or give her one step instruction, or this is how we do it at home. And I think again, most coaches would really like appreciate any of that information to help your, because it helps your child, but it also helps them be a better coach to your child. We see so many kids with ADHD that have such exceptional strengths in um, sports and
Mhm.
athletics, and their parents are saying if only they could pay attention, they could really do amazingly well. And so giving a coach those tools really helps them to be a more effective coach for your child and them to be a more successful teammate.
Absolutely. And so, what you guys are saying though is in that situation, a parent wouldn't have to share all of the information, right?
No.
Like, you wouldn't necessarily
Mhm.
have to say, oh, yeah, he was diagnosed with combined ADHD in 2021, and this is what we're doing with meds. I mean, that's like oversharing potentially. It's up to you how much you want to share,
Yeah.
but you can share a strategy or two strategies without necessarily oversharing or like embarrassing your
Yeah.
child, or just sharing their information. I think in today's world we're all so sensitive to not want to overshare about
Right.
our kids, but it can be a big game changer. I know my husband coaches basketball for my son, and there was a kid on the team last year, exactly what you're describing, Lori. Like, he just was not getting it, like, at all. Like, the kids are all dribbling at one end of the court and he's completely at the other end of the court, climbing the vending machine. And my husband, who does not work with kids in his everyday life, was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. But it wasn't until the end of the season that his mom actually approached my husband, and she was like, really grateful. She's like, I'm so grateful that you worked with him and you've just been such a good support. And these are some of the things that we've struggled with at home too. And it was a beautiful conversation, but it was almost a little too late. It would have been better, I think, for them to have that conversation several months earlier, because it would have opened that door. And he's a volunteer coach, but the idea is that he wants to help, he wants to support. And I think that
Hmm.
that makes a huge difference from the perspective of the people that are working with your kids, to understand that you're aware and you're on the team and you're on the same page. I just think that that can be a big game changer.
And that brings us to our fourth point, which is it really can also open the door for additional supports and services. So, we talk a lot about 504 plans and IEPs on the podcast. Most of you who are in this position of, do I tell my child's teacher, really probably don't have any of those plans in place.
Mhm.
And so a lot of times opening up that conversation might help you and the teacher talk about, do we need to make kind of a formal request to talk about an evaluation? Like, does your child's teacher think that that would be beneficial to them? And a lot of times in the schools, the child's teacher will initially go to a team of people within the school to start doing like what we call pre-referral interventions. So they're going to start doing some interventions, giving the teachers ideas about how to support your child in the classroom before they do an evaluation. So that can start that process in the schools to get your child additional supports. I've worked with families and worked with a family recently where they started talking to their child's teacher, and this particular school had a counselor, and the teacher communicated what was going on in the classroom with the counselor after the parent had shared that information. And this counselor was awesome and already had like a lunch social group going on, and this child was able to start into that. Like they the parent didn't know anything about it, and the child loved the group. I mean, it was just something that they look forward to at school. They had a great connection with that
Aw,
particular counselor.
I love that.
So yeah, so again, it just kind of opens the door to, every school is different with regard to what programs they have, what services they offer, people who are specialized in different areas that can really offer additional support once you start talking about those things.
Absolutely. I think that's definitely a confusion for a lot of parents. Like, we get a lot of messages and emails like, what should I ask for? And sometimes we're like, it depends. It depends on
Yes.
your child. It depends on what they need. And it can be sort of overwhelming. Something that we've talked about before on the podcast, but I do want to mention, is that if you are going to talk to your teacher and saying, okay, my child struggles. Let's use an example of turning in work. They do their work at home, but then they leave it in their backpack or in their cubby and it doesn't get turned in. And around third and fourth grade, that becomes an issue because the teachers aren't chasing down the homework anymore. And instead, they're just saying, okay, half credit if it's late or whatever. And so it can be really discouraging for kids who previously have done well. And so let's say you go to your teacher and you say, hey, this is a problem. What can we do? Here's kind of the backstory of why this might be happening. And a really common response that teachers will say is, okay, great. What do you think we should do? And they want to kind of get your ideas first. And I know that for myself as a parent, I feel a little deer in headlights in that moment. Like, oh my gosh, I don't know. what are the choices? So I know that that can be overwhelming. So we do actually have an accommodations guide for you. It's a free guide that you can download, and it is linked in the show notes today to help give some ideas. And how we organized it is based on the specific challenge that you're having. Here are 3 or 4 ideas for that specific issue. Turning in work, being super busy with our bodies at school, those kind of things, just to start the sort of a jumping off point to start negotiations. It's not a comprehensive list by any means. We didn't want to overwhelm you with 500 choices, but it gets the sort of creative thoughts flowing of what can we do to help support this kid. And I think teachers oftentimes will come with their own suggestions as well, but they're going to be looking to you, as we said, as the expert on your own child. So that's a really helpful tool.
For my kids, the last thing they want to do when they get home from school is homework.
Totally. And the last thing I want to do after a long day of work is deal with the stress of meal planning, grocery shopping, cooking, and cleaning up the kitchen.
Same here. We tried Hungry Root Grocery Service to help us eat balanced meals while saving time and money every week. It's been a game changer for our weekly meals and snacks, and I love that you can customize groceries based on your kids' or your family's dietary restrictions.
Yes, my husband eats gluten free, and I love that I can customize groceries based on our family's needs. And not only can I get complete meals delivered, but I can also order my weekly groceries through them. And I'm always amazed at how my kids will try new things just because they came out of our Hungry Root box.
Yes. It's easy to customize your box each week, and you can skip weeks whenever you want. For a limited time, Hungry Root is offering our listeners 40% off your first box, which is amazing. Just be sure to use the code ChildhoodCollective40 so you can get the discount.
We also have the link and the code in the show notes, so you can try Hungry Root today.
Over the past year, my oldest has really struggled with anxiety, especially at night. As soon as it was time for sleep, she'd be crying for me to stay and worrying about all the things. I was talking to another therapist about our bedtime battles, and she said the Zenimal, a screen free meditation device, had been a game changer for her daughter with ADHD and anxiety. I immediately purchased the Zenimal and can confidently say it was the best tool to help my daughter get better sleep. She was able to fall asleep an hour earlier using it.
Yes, it's actually really helped my kids to be able to calm their busy bodies at night.
What we love about the Zenimal is that it combines 2 of our favorite bedtime recommendations, using a relaxation strategy and removing screens from the bedroom.
The Zenimal is an adorable screen free turtle with 9 guided meditations your kids can choose from. And our absolute favorite part of the Zenimal is that every meditation ends with the most important message: you're a good kid.
To grab your own Zenimal and get your child and yourself some better sleep, head to zenimals.com and use our code TCC for a discount. You can also find the link in the show notes.
So, our fifth reason why we encourage you to talk with teachers is because it allows you to create a solid plan. And this can look like a lot of different things, but in this case, I'm not really talking about a 504 plan or something, more of a plan with the teacher. Like, how are we going to communicate? So, things come up. I know my kids might have a night when they don't sleep well, or, there's big transitions. My husband's traveling for work, and I want to be able to let the teachers know kind of generally what's going on. And they really appreciate that because they want to know what's happening at home. And similarly, you want to be getting feedback consistently about how things are going. I think we all have that like fear of a whole semester going by and then sitting down at parent teacher conferences and they're like, there's so many issues. And you're just like, oh my gosh, like, oh, please, why did we not talk about this sooner? And so that frequent communication can be really helpful. And this can look like so many different things. But when you're thinking about how to communicate with the teacher, you might say, hey, I understand that you're really busy. We can't do like a weekly check-in on the phone, but maybe we could email when something comes up. We have some kids with a higher level of communication where they are getting like a daily check-in, check-out. And so that can look different depending on the situation, but we just want to let you know that it's okay, and it's actually highly recommended to set up some sort of a plan. We're going to try this new strategy to help your child turn in their work, and we're going to check back next week and see how it's going, so that everyone has that clarity of what we're doing next, and it doesn't feel quite so ambiguous. And then you're kind of like, was I supposed to, or were you? And we've all been there, and no one wants to be the squeaky wheel. Although I always tell my families, like, be the squeaky wheel, it's fine. If you don't, like, you're not going to get what you need. So maybe be a squeaky wheel, but at the same time, when you set that expectation, you might feel better and more confident to reach out and say, hey, how's this going? Just wanted to check in.
I also love when communication happens not just when things are challenging or the teacher doesn't know what to do. If you set up a regular form of communication, like a weekly email check in, it gives you the opportunity also to get feedback about things that are really going well. And as you know, as a parent to a child with ADHD, I know that it can feel like that information is few and far between sometimes. The good news, it feels like, you're at school pickup and the teacher is approaching you, your stomach sinks because if the teacher is coming to talk to you that something happened at school and it wasn't good. And that's really hard as a parent to only
Mhm.
be getting critical feedback from the teacher. So when you set up a regular form of communication, you're going to check in with your child's teacher every day, every week, every month, regardless of whether there's challenges or not. It gives you the opportunity to get some of that positive feedback that you really need as a parent, that then you can pass along to your child, because your child really needs that positive feedback. Oh, your teacher told me today that you were so helpful when your friend fell on the playground and scraped their knee. How kind of you to think about
Mhm.
how
Yeah.
you could help your friend and help find a grown up to help them feel better. We know that you need that positive feedback. So when you have that form of communication regularly scheduled, it gets you that information more often, and that helps everyone feel better.
Yeah, I remember at the beginning of the school year that it was probably a month into the school year, and we got an email from my daughter's teacher, and both my husband and I were like, our stomachs dropped, and we open it up, and it's like all this positive feedback on how she's doing at school, and I thought, what an awesome. She's a fourth grade teacher. What an awesome fourth grade teacher to like send out. And she did it for like, I think all the kids in the class. But even communicating that like to your child's teacher, like I also need to hear positive things. So if you could send me positive updates, sometimes you have to like tell it, it's almost like a really, like I have to tell my husband, like I really need you to give me like words of affirmation, like I benefit from that. With any relationship, sometimes you have to tell the people like what you need, and it's
Mhm.
not a bad thing to be like, hey, I need to get some of those positive emails when she's doing well. If you could include that, like that means the world to me, and letting them know that up front.
Absolutely. I had a similar situation with my son, where we got a note home, and I love our school is doing more of a school wide like celebration, where if kids do something really well,
Yes.
they send home a note. And I think I hope that more schools pick that up, because I think it's very cool and it makes a big impact. But I was surprised at what an impact it had on my son, even more so than myself and my husband. But we got this note, and it started out like, he was playing soccer, and he kicked the ball really hard, and it hit a kid in the face. And it was actually this kid's first day at our school. Okay.
Oh.
So I start reading the note, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And my son is like very, very strong, like exceptionally strong for his age. So I'm literally thinking, like, this kid lost his teeth. Like, they're going to, the first day of the new school. So I keep reading, and it goes on, and it says, like, he showed compassion because he immediately ran to the boy and like stopped playing the game. He showed friendship when he offered to get ice. He showed perseverance
Oh.
because he sat next to the friend. And so as I'm reading, I'm like getting emotional, honestly, to read all these wonderful things. And you work with your kids, at play dates and at the park, and you're just like, please let it stick. Please let it stick. But it did. And it was really cool. But what I want to say about that is, it's really important to share that feedback with our kids. So we ended up putting that on our fridge. And I'm sort of weird about my fridge. Like, I do not want stuff hanging on my fridge. So it's a very shiny refrigerator. But we have this little note up there about how he showed all of these awesome character traits. And it every day he kind of checks it out. Like, oh, my note's still up there. He's pretty casual about it.
Oh.
But I know that it means so much to him. And I think that's so important. Like, when we hear positive things too, to make sure to pass that along to our kids, because they they get a lot of negative feedback too, and a lot of just corrections. Oh, stand in line. Oh, take your hood off. Oh, stand, it's a lot. And so I think having that reminder, like, you're a really great kid and this is how you showed friendship to your new friend, your new toothless friend. So it's please let no teeth have fallen out. They did not say in the letter. I'm fairly certain that he didn't lose any
I
major
think they
body
would have
parts.
let you know, Katie.
Oh
I
my
think they would have
gosh.
let you know.
Yeah. Well, there's like that immediate feeling of like, oh no. But anyway, I just think that's such an important part of it too. So yeah, if you have any influence at your child's school, let them know, like, a system-wide way to celebrate kids can be
Yeah.
can be huge. And you're not the only family that would benefit from that, which is
No,
pretty cool.
ages ago when I was in grad school, all I did was train schools in school-wide positive behavior supports.
Mhm.
And so even using that language and looking into what is school-wide positive behavior supports was an amazing way to get all the kids being taught and reinforced for appropriate behaviors, because it's not just our kids with ADHD that need it. All kids really benefit from teaching expectations and getting like that praise and positive feedback. That's how we teach our kids. That's how we teach our kids expectations. It's not correcting them. It's really teaching them what we expect and teaching and reinforcing them and praising them when they're successful and giving them that positive feedback that they so desperately need.
So, there you have it, our 5 reasons to consider sharing your child's diagnosis with their teacher. But again, make sure that you're considering your family's unique situation and needs when making the decision about whether to share or not. And your key takeaway today is when you share your child's diagnosis, you're able to set the tone and really drive the collaboration with your child's teacher to everyone's benefit.
Thanks for listening to Shining with ADHD by your hosts, Lori, Katie, and Mallory of the Childhood Collective.
If you enjoyed this episode, please like this video and hit subscribe so you can be the first to know when a new episode airs.
If you are looking for links and resources mentioned in this episode, you can always find those in the show notes. See you next time.